The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus came from Galilee to John at the Jordan to be baptized by him. John tried to prevent him, saying, "I need to be baptized by you, and yet you are coming to me?" Well, Jesus then said to him in reply, "Well, allow it for now, for thus it is fitting for us to fulfill all righteousness." He then allowed him. And after Jesus was baptized, he came up from the water, and behold, the heavens were opened before him, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and coming upon him, and a voice then from heaven said, "This is my beloved, with whom I am well pleased." The Gospel of the Lord. This is my beloved, my beloved, this is. There's a way in which today or in any day I may look for that call of the beloved. There's a song on the top of the charts today called "The Man I Need" by a young artist whose name is Olivia Dean. She's of Jamaican and Guyanese descent. And the lyrics for her song go a little bit like this, if I can find them. Give me just a moment. How does she say it? Talk to me, be the man that I need. Just come to be the man I need. Tell me you got something to give and I want it. I kind of like it when you call me wonderful. Whatever the type of talk it is, come on then. I got to know you were meant to be the man I need. So talk to me. I was taken up by those lyrics. First of all, she's one of the newest artists to get into the top 5 songs that are being listened to mostly these days because the Taylor Swift and the Demon Hunters and Alex Warren, they've been dominating before Christmas and now after Christmas with the same songs. But this is a fresh new voice, at least for the top 10, this voice of Olivia Dean. And her song, "The Man I Need," and that way in which she wants someone who is affirming, who's going to say and speak about appreciation, talking about how wonderful we really are, in some ways captures our feast of this baptism of Jesus today. It allows us to understand, I think, a little bit of how you and I need that kind of affirmation. In fact, we look for that affirmation of our own call as Christians, our own beauty and wonderfulness as human beings, rolling out of the celebration of Christmas, the incarnation of our God becoming one of us and living our life. The front end of the Christmas season more or less ends, a Christmas octave, the 12 days of Christmas, the Epiphany tide after the Feast of the Epiphany. And now at the baptism of Jesus, we have in some ways the official end of the more clear Christmas season with this affirmation of Jesus and his mission as an adult being baptized in the Jordan by his cousin John the Baptist. And there's a way in which Jesus in his own humanity needs that affirmation of God, needs a clear call and confirmation of himself on his mission. And that's really what a big part of his baptism is. He can step forward with that explicit call and that explicit affirmation of God. And you and I need the same thing in our own human journey, in our own human life as Christians, our own ability to live our humanity as God created it to be, as it's God's calls it and graces us to be. And so there's a way in which we need that. We live in a world where that affirmation is not there. And in fact, there's unfortunately, I think, an increase in uptake in the degradation of our humanity. There's a way in which we're treating each other as commodities and problems. We're treating each other cheaply or worse, as expendable, or as Pope Francis would often talk about us as a throwaway culture where people can be thrown away. Right before Christmas, Pope Leo called for a suspension of the ways in which we're going after our immigrants in our countries? And could we have a break of that, reprieve during the Christmas season, giving families an ability to stay together to celebrate Christmas? Well, in our country, we did exactly the opposite, and in fact, Christmas Eve raids were common. People were deported on Christmas Eve, families were broken up, and in fact, there were even official statements saying, "Merry Christmas, here's our gift to you." What an affront to exactly the kind of humanity Pope Leo was calling for. And so I think there's a way in which you and I need to look at the baptism of Jesus today in this end of the Christmas season and figure out how we can cleverly and forcefully confirm and affirm our own humanity in the humanity of others that allows for that affirmation, that affirmative, positive affirmation, to be a power over and against the kind of degradation that's common in our world right now. We need to do that. Unfortunately, we have very few models for how to do that. At least I do. The leaders we have right now are often very insecure people who live sycophantish lives. They're sycophantish, begging for a false and superficial affirmation, asking for weird, awards that they don't deserve, or asking people to give, "You got an award, can you give it to me to affirm me?" Like, it sounds so pathetic. That kind of superficial desire, it's a sycophantic way of living and not acknowledging their own human dignity and value. And now we have, I think, unfortunately, in systems, whether the leadership systems right now, sycophants sycophanting after sycophants. I mean, it's just compounded. And we don't need to be totally distracted by that. In fact, it's a counterexample, but that's not even helpful maybe. It's important, I think, for us to just tune into the fact of our own dignity and well-being, our own call to live a full and thriving life, and to then call out that from people, especially where it's being affronted, and not call it out like calling out what somebody else is doing against them, but to call forth and point to that human dignity, that way in which our God says to you and me, no matter who we are, that you are my beloved. And in you I am well pleased, and not just pleased, but I affirm you for who you are. And you and I think, are called to keep doing that to one another, so that that kind of energy and that kind of voice crowds out the degradation, the affront to human dignity. I don't exactly know the opportunities for exactly how that's going to play out for each of us in this new year, but it has to be something we are called to consider, because I think we're called to do it all the more. In this new year, the baptism of Jesus and the very affirmation to become the person that we're called to be, and looking at how Jesus has been affirmed and called forth by God in the baptism of Jesus, then maybe you and I can say, yeah, we need to talk to one another, as our friend, the young artist Olivia Dean says. We need to talk to each other and then come to be the person that we need from each other. So talk to me. You got something to give? I want it. I kind of like it when you call me wonderful. Whatever the type of talk it is, come on then, I got to know you're meant to be the man, the person, the people that we're meant to be. Talk to me. Let us talk to God and look for that call. Let us talk to one another and find those opportunities where we can affirm each other in our human dignity, in our human call, in our human mission, so that we can look upon each other as God looks upon Christ today and say, yes, you and all of us are beloved. We're well pleased to affirm that dignity, that hope, and that call. Amen.